please enjoy this ad-free episode as part of our Academic Integrity series sponsored by Pangram Labs, the world's leading AI detection tool. Try it out at pangram.com. That's pangram.com.
Welcome back, everybody. It's your time to ed up on the Ed Up Experience podcast, where we make education your business. This is Owen Freitas, co-founder of the Ed Up Experience, and we are back on another fantastic episode of our Academic Integrity series. And of course, with me, as always, the co-host, who is the most. He is Bradley Emmy, and he is the co-founder and CTO at Pangram Labs. Bradley, how you doing?
I'm doing good on this Good Friday.
Oh, yes. Good Friday to you, sir. Yeah, fantastic. Okay. You know how we work, Bradley. We want to jump right in. So we're going to bring in our guest. He is Joseph Thibault, and he is the founder of Cursive Technology and the creator of the This Isn't Fine newsletter. Joseph, how you doing?
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Cool. So it's okay to call you Joe. So we talked about that beforehand. So Joe, we want to know all about you. Tell us about Cursive Technology. Tell us about what you do and how do you do it?
Sure. Well, my pleasure is mine to be here. Thanks for having me on as a guest. So Cursive is really kind of an offshoot of 2 decades or so of experience in education technology, where spent a long time scaling and growing online education programs at an alternative credit provider called StraighterLine, and was really well familiar with all aspects of academic operations, from building courses, delivering courses, assessing courses. We had a really large scale online English composition course, and we evaluated like 10,000 essays every month. And every once in a while, like many colleges across the United States and elsewhere do, we would receive this kind of like unsolicited note from a person or an email, which would be like, here's all the submissions from a student, and here's their username and password, and here you go. They never paid me, so I'm going to turn them in, and you can put them through the academic honesty policy or whatever. So we went in search. I often was kind of very surprised that this occurred. So over years, kind of talked to peers and talked to other large scale online universities and even face-to-face universities, and says, what do you do when this happens? And they basically, everybody had the same answer, which is, well, we put it through the process and we do the investigation. I said, well, how do you like proactively, take care of this? Like, what's the tool or what's the policy that I can have? Since we were online, we didn't have a face-to-face opportunity to meet with students. And I really was very hesitant to try to say like, okay, well, we're just going to proctor students completely throughout the writing process. That didn't seem like a really good proposition either. So we were kind of left without a commercial response, and tried to find something to put and kind of plug that hole, but largely got really interested in kind of this other dirty secret of higher education, which is like essay mills exist, contract cheating exists, and there really is not a kind of concerted effort to stop that at a large scale effort. So I left StraighterLine, got really kind of deep into like, what would you do to try to solve this issue? That is that actually part of that research ended up being a newsletter where we actively kind of try to thwart essay mill advertising to students through user like basically flagging ads that should have been filtered through Google's AdWords network that are advertising for contract cheating services and essay mills. And then also started to work on, how would I tie a writer to the writing that I'm using for assessment in class, and that has become Cursive. So that's what I've been working on for like the last 20 years or so.
Yeah. So for those in our audience less familiar, could you talk a little about like what is contract cheating and like what are essay mills? Like what are these companies doing?
Yeah. So a lot hide behind the moniker more friendly, which would be like homework help or editing assistance. But in a sense, these are websites that allow students to cognitively outsource their work, but rather than to AI, to a human, right? So somebody else will do the research and do the work and basically ghost write assignments, which is Obviously a concern for academic integrity, because you want the student who's enrolled in your class to be the person that's actually doing the work and earning the credit and grades and degree. But these institutions or these businesses run kind of in this manner of basically providing this as a service to students. It can be kind of somewhere between like $8 and $13 per page. They operate largely, actually a lot have their headquarters in the US. We've done a lot of research into kind of documenting these types of sites, the kind of the advertising mechanisms that they use, whether that's social media or they're using Google AdWords and other places, but also have tracked traffic and estimated revenue of these. When we first started looking at this was kind of right around the time that ChatGPT came out. We estimated it was about a $4 billion a year industry worldwide for English language essay mills only. Wow. But obviously they've been, like many other industries, kind of really impacted by ChatGPT and the ease by which you can cognitively outsource instead to AI with a lot less risk. Because one of the things that contract cheating sites and essay mills do is, if you don't pay them, they can turn you in, right? Because they're people. And ChatGPT is yet to do that, I suppose, unless you are pasting in, like as a generative AI chatbot. But they also can extort students. So it's like a very high risk endeavor for students from the perspective that they can come back and kind of really haunt a student and extort and kind of extract additional compensation and money from students because they have this pretty sensitive information about a student, which they can hold over them and potentially jeopardize, grades, credits, and even their degree thereafter for years and years. So it's really just this like pretty terrible negative aspect of kind of academic integrity as a broad market, and how so it's kind of fascinating, but also very concerning.
Real quick, Joe, before we continue, I really want to understand how you define academic integrity. I think that's going to help for the rest of the conversation.
Sure. So I think that there's a lot of definitions that get floated around. And obviously, most people, when they think of academic integrity, they think of like the honor code or the academic integrity policy, which really are kind of a list of do's and don'ts, leaning, pretty heavily on the don'ts, right? So it's like the do your own work, right? Don't use these other resources. Capital H honor systems where it's like a honor code collective of the student body, right? If you see something, you have to say something, right? Or else you might also be in trouble. It can be as simple as don't look at somebody else's paper. But I would say is like, this is a set of extrinsic rules by which I, as a student, have to navigate in order to meet said standards from a class or a department or from an institution. Now, personally, I think of integrity as like it's making an alignment between my thinking, my words, my actions, and my intentions in order to kind of create trust. But I would say is like at a real simple kind of definition would be is like academic integrity is the agreement which you come to between faculty and students. And that can be many different things, and it can look very different class to class. But in a sense, it's like the integrity is a kind of a social contract that we're creating and recreating as we navigate each course and kind of macro changes to the environment that which we are teachers and learners.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, a lot of people have been throwing around the words like trust. I think that implies a sort of social contract, and I think that makes a lot of sense. I want to go back to actually kind of something you touched on in the beginning when we were talking about like essay mills and how they often just brand themselves as homework help, because I think we can all agree that like, homework help is well within the bounds of academic integrity. Like it's totally fine to like, go to a friend or like, hire a tutor to be like, hey, I'm really struggling with this material and I could use some help. So in your opinion, kind of like when does that cross the line into cheating and academic integrity violations? Because obviously there's a big spectrum, right? It's kind of like, okay, like between homework help and full on criminal extortion of students, once they've, paid $15 for an essay, right? Like clearly these are two sides of the spectrum, but of course there's going to be a messy middle. So like, where would you say like kind of like the distinction is between like just help and tutoring versus cheating.
I mean, that it's I would say that I'm hesitant to throw a distinction because it depends on the circumstance. And I would say is like from external resources outside of your university, and this is for all 100% of the students that are listening, your university or your college or your high school likely is offering permitted resources such as tutoring, writing center assistance, all of these kind of scaffolded resources that you'd expect from a educational experience through the university and or through the college or through the high school, which are well trained, and they are kind of working in concert with your existing academic integrity policies and your classes. So those are the resources by which you should rely on first and foremost.
If you go to a
When
good school.
Yeah, well, most schools, I mean, even like online, we offered a suite of additional 24-hour tutoring, right? Writing center, a lot of opportunities for students to come to. Now, when it's accessing resources outside of that environment, I would say is that you have to ask, right? So even working with a friend could potentially be outside of the bounds, depending on the academic integrity policy of a specific class, right? That's in some cases that could cross the line immediately into the realm of collusion, but it really takes a lot of intention and effort to correctly navigate these things. So if you're ever concerned, or as these things come up, I would say you need to really have a frank and open and transparent discussions with faculty to understand, where does group work begin, or where does that become collusion? Because it can depend, right? It's all about kind of the agreement that you have each of the courses and with your faculty as you're working along. So hesitant to say like where's the line, because the line can be it should be pretty specific, and I would say is all teachers and students collectively should have a very clear understanding together of where that line is so that students can correctly navigate.
Yeah, totally. Like there is no line. It's like it's where the instructor chooses to draw the line. And hopefully that instructor has a very good communication around where that line is with their students, right?
Yeah. And I would say I've heard lots of great kind of encouraging stories too of where students get to participate in the delineation of those. And I think a lot of faculty have probably been surprised that when they pose the question to students, that the students choose, in some cases, a much more stringent approach collectively because they want to create a level playing field. And I think those things are, they're changing and evolving, but the open conversations certainly help.
Yeah, definitely. And like it's funny too, because like I mean I think that there's so much like fear and insecurity among students. Like, so I went to Stanford as a physics major, and like obviously a very hard major. Like, physics is not an easy subject. And, a lot of times people would show up to office hours and they'd just be like really, really struggling and like just could not get it. And like the TA would like try their best to like help them out. But then, you see students come to office hours and they're just like, okay, like, I just want the answer. Like, I just want to copy off the person next to me. And so I saw a lot of this, like, people kind of doing a lot of like offloading and kind of like collusion with their friends, in ways that I don't think were necessarily beneficial for their learning. But I think a lot of students also just feel a lot of desperation. Like, a lot of cheating just comes from kind of these fears and these insecurities of kind of learned helplessness. And so I think there's an aspect of like we need to empower our students too and make them feel like, okay, like you can do this, like you can get through this. And also kind of being okay with like, if you can't do this, like that's okay. Like, you don't have to turn to like kind of these malicious alternatives in order to get through your schooling.
That's a great point.
Yeah. Yeah, so kind of tell us a little bit about kind of where Cursive fits into this picture. Like kind of how does kind of studying the writing process help preserve academic integrity?
Sure. So we first and foremost, I would say is like the Cursive is a behavioral approach to monitoring or to collecting data about writing. So in traditional plagiarism detection or academic integrity tools, we have kind of three different camps. One is plagiarism by comparing your text to a database of other texts, right? It's like looking for similarity. And then there is, as Bradley will know and probably correct me, but I would say is like statistical analysis of text also to delineate, is this have indicators of being artificially like AI generated text, right? So, and we're using statistical analysis and many other very like high tech things in order to take a lot of, I think you used a term in the last podcast is like kind of weak signals to create a strong kind of indication. What we're doing is something slightly different, which is we're looking at the behavior of the student through the writing process and really just like key log data. As we collect that, we have a much richer indication of kind of what happened during the writing process. And that can be very beneficial, one, for showing the student in terms of and reflecting back their own process to them. And we've seen a number of tools like this start to hit the market where kind of under the moniker of process tracking tools, right? You can extract some of this data from Google Docs because they're doing a pretty granular and key log data collection. But you can also do it in tools like I think Turnitin has one. There's a number of others that are out there that basically provide this type of replay of the writing process in order to be a different way to approach kind of detection or verification that students have done the work. So we're doing something like that. We're leveraging that data. The first thing that we wanted to make sure, though, is really to tie the writing to a specific writer. So I want to talk specifically about like authorship at the individual authorship level, that you can know that I am the author of this text because it's verifiable to my user ID on the learning management system. And the way that we've done that is an integration to learning management systems where it works within the text editor. We notify that the student has indication that this technology is being used. And really, they have all access also transparently to the information that's captured. So same information that teachers get, the students are getting, they're getting it at the same time. So the kind of the availability is there as well. But it's more about the behavioral aspect of the creation process and a real focus on the process. And I would say is like, I understand that there's some contention currently, kind of similar to AI detection, of like whether we should be using this or not. And I lean towards the opportunity where I do think that teachers and administrators and institutions and also students have a right to kind of understand and know that the people who are their peers or that the students enrolled in the classes are actually the people who are paying and are actually the people who have gotten the financial aid and are supposed to be earning the degrees. Like, I think that's an important thing that this is personal, but it's like, I want to know that my teacher knows that it's my work that I'm submitting. And I think my teacher also wants to know that. It's really discouraging and it's disheartening to know or to kind of think that a student has submitted work that does not represent their own thoughts. And I think we're starting to see that kind of pull on with this question about where AI and authorship, which has muddled the situation a little bit. But I think that there's a path through that. But first and foremost, I am about the if I'm a student, I want my teacher to know that Joe is the author and that these thoughts represent kind of my own work and effort as my way to earn the credits and the grades and the degree ultimately.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, I think through our work, like we have a lot of intuition for like what AI tech sounds like. Like, we know the words like tapestry and delve and like the patterns, like not just A, but B, also B, or like in conclusion. But I guess I have a lot less intuition for kind of like the writing process side of things. Like I guess maybe like, could you just provide us some intuition for like, what does it look like when like something a student submits is not the same thing as kind of the indications that you've measured previously? Like, kind of what does that look like? Like, what are kind of the signals that Cursive is picking up?
Sure. So
that tell us that.
Yeah, it's a great question. So since we're looking at the behavior of it, so in the sense is like the way that you type on a keyboard, that's a signature. So it's like if you're typing naturally,
So like a fingerprint kind of.
Yeah, you're just not thinking about it, right? It's a mechanical exercise that's something then kind of trained innately to you, and it's naturally expressed through your interaction with the world's most ubiquitous human computer interface, right? Like a QWERTY keyboard. Everybody has one. Everybody has access to the one. They're generally standard size, right? It's very easy to kind of interact with these things. And we are, in a sense, that most of us were probably trained on something like Monkey Type or Mavis Beacon. Mavis Beacon for the old for the old folks like me.
Oh no, I used Mavis Beacon.
Okay, all right,
Maybe
great.
I'm old too.
Right. So
Not yet, Bradley, not yet.
yeah. So if you think about the typing processes, like think about when you had memorized a password, and you probably can think about the motion and the movement of that password is consistent, right? It's like you have a way that you're doing the keys. Now, this is not new technology, nor is it kind of it's not rare either. It's used in kind of passkey verification and other ways like that. It's like you probably have been in some cases typing your password wrong, but you're still being able to log in because they're using the typing biometric because they have a consistent read on whether it's you or not, right? So that's just being applied here to a longer form in terms of essays, and we're able to basically do the authorship verification in that way. So it's that's hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, so I'm curious if people's typing behavior is actually like as unique as a fingerprint. Like what are the odds that two people's typing styles are just like the same, like by coincidence?
Yeah, so in I will answer that in two ways. One is that in discussions with another large company that does typing biometrics as their whole kind of purpose, they basically said that they didn't believe that there was an upper limit to the uniqueness.
Really?
Now, for Cursive perspective, I actually am not doing a comparison across our potential student body of whether they match any other users in our system. What we want to do is just create a verifiable kind of chain of consistency and trust. So what we're only doing is allowing for the student to verify against themselves and to continue to doing that. I think that's uh, makes it a little bit more low stakes, right? Because I'm not doing student to student comparison. What we're really doing is allowing for a kind of easy system of trust to be created initially by the students, and it can be extremely low stakes, and it can be as short as around 300 to 400 characters as a student is working, which is only like that's not very many words. That's like 60 to 80 words as a student is working through the process, and we think about kind of the amount of text that students type over the course of time. There's a lot more information that we can provide longitudinally about the writing process to help a student to talk about like how much editing that they're doing, how quickly that they're writing, how the kind of the effort that they put in, and comparing that to the grades that they're getting, allowing the student to have more feedback about kind of the process in context of the final product. And also, I think that there's this really great opportunity of when AI is now kind of layered in or allowed by teachers as part of the product. What does it take to kind of get to really good product from a prompting standpoint or from an editing standpoint? If I take AI and I include that, what am I doing after? What's that look like from a new writing process that I think is largely not studied, but it also causes issues if it's like AI detection becomes a little bit less um, I would say is like it becomes a little bit less accurate from a tool perspective when AI is included, but you still are trying to verify that the student has put non-zero effort into the writing process. And I think that's what most teachers are looking for, and where a lot of the frustration comes today is that if we kind of open the door to, yes, you can use AI, it's hard to know without a different assessment from a writing perspective. It's hard to know whether the student has done anything because AI consistently is getting better and better as we move along. If I want to know that the student has done something, I either have to get to share the prompt, or I have to change the assessment, or I have to kind of say that the writing actually has zero value. And I would, in my personal perspective, I don't believe that writing has zero value. I still think that there's a really strong place for it as an essential skill, and really kind of like one of the most sought skills from a communication perspective currently and also moving forward.
Oh, for sure. And I kind of want to get into this too, which is that authorship is very non-binary, especially in this like era of AI, right? It's like, like even, in the AI detection side, like, not everything is either completely AI generated or completely written by a human. Like, there's human text that was, human authors the rough draft and then uses AI to refine it. Or a human uses AI to write the first draft and then put some of their own ideas, like, sprinkled throughout or whatever. And so like, are you guys kind of measuring like the degree to which there might be like kind of multiple authors involved and like tracking like kind of the contributions from different sources too?
Yeah, so in our the implementation that we have to learning management system, when you have access to both kind of the in-process yeah, like documentation or the in-process creation elements, right? So often we call that, it's like think of it as like total characters pressed would be like verbosity, which when you verbosity being a term where we usually say is like that's too much talking, which is right now I have being very verbose. You want to tell me to be more concise, but as I kind of so you have kind of total process activity. But when you end up submitting, you have a different number, which is kind of like that you have a shorter, more concise static text. Now, if you use a lot of AI, your verbosity actually might be less, right? So you have less text generated, but you have more in the final product, right? So it's like that's where it's actually you can go back to some of these older methods for text similarity and text comparison to kind of see the student's kind of original work within the context of what is submitted, which is a different way to look at kind of how a document or an article or an essay or even a discussion post or some other work was created. So if you think of like uh, Grammarly kind of rips or like other text creation tools or generative AI often will change the text pretty significantly where it's hard to see the original text in the final version of that. But it's not to say that that's not there. If you can have both, you can really clearly kind of pull those things together. And I don't know if we want to call it like an X-ray vision or something else. We call it the diff feature, which is just a way is like a way to compare those two things, either from a perspective of effort or from the perspective of what thoughts or what words are can't be attributed to the student's direct effort. And those may not have any ramification on the actual quality of the writing, but at least you can still see that the students contributed a lot here and what the kind of critical thinking, if you're trying to evaluate that, that becomes much more valuable because I think that's one of the problems is like if I'm allowed to use AI and I get a piece of work, it's hard to know what critical thinking I've done in just static text. But if you can see my work process in terms of the prompts that I've used, the edits that I've made, the corrections that I've gone through to make a really good work product, some of that now can be surfaced again, which I think has a lot of value.
Yeah, and bring it back to academic integrity. Like it's really up to the teacher to kind of like decide like okay, like what is okay, what is not okay, like what kinds of outside tooling use am I going to allow, like etc. And this is kind of yet another tool that can just give teachers insights and transparency into what actually happened so that they can make better decisions. So yeah, I think that's awesome. Um, yeah, I mean, I think I'm sure you're aware of these, but I mean, I think like we've seen on the market like stuff coming in like students know that like teachers are going to be looking at their Google Docs and stuff. So now there's these like auto human typers that are coming out of these AI cheating sites. And then there's going to be, obviously like Claude computer use and OpenAI has like some computer use stuff too that's trained on human writing and can theoretically like type like a human. And so like I guess like where do you see these like do you see these tools as still being kind of detectable as compared to real human writing? Like what's kind of the status of those?
Yeah, I say so far, yes, it's totally detectable. And I won't give away why. But yeah, I would say is like we're early interesting story. When Claude computer use came out, we started to look at kind of the signature that had, and it was what was very strange and interesting is that initially it was not writing in English. So the keylog data was coming in as something totally disparate and disconnected from the actual text that you were seeing on the screen, which was both fascinating and scary because it was like reading like alien language. That being said, is like they don't type like humans right now, so
That's
that's
encouraging.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Well, encouraging and also it's crazy and scary. The on the other hand, I would say is like where the focus is on your authorship, right? So is it consistently you? And I think that one of the things I want to really lean into both with students, and we've gotten good positive feedback from the students that we talked to at the University of Maryland, and also students have access to the text as it's being collected, is that the insight into your own writing is valuable. And when you start to muddy that with artificial data, for the purpose of trying to obfuscate this, especially when you've been given permission to use AI. Why kind of rob yourself of this intuition or this insight? It'd be like me putting Strava on a bike, but saying that I'm running, right? It's like if it's a self-facing information that's can be potentially used to make me faster or better or more efficient or to help me to understand my own personal deficiencies in a way that where I can be a better human from a human intelligence perspective. I think there's a real opportunity here to kind of shift the narrative where this is actually about insight into yourself and your own thinking and your own writing. And as we start to see academic integrity policies relax, where AI is now part of the workflow and is allowed as such, there still is a lot of value in knowing how you can best work on your own workflow in terms of how to leverage this for better and faster and more efficient use of AI. And I think that that's the key here is like there's a human element that will always remain as part of education, which is what am I doing and what am I thinking and what is my differentiation so that I can have that show through. Because if we're all just leveraging AI and we're all using ChatGPT, that sounds pretty average to me. Like, and I think that that's one of the concerns that teachers have now is that they get 50 submissions and 30 of them are basically all exactly the same. But students vary, right? They should, and your own contribution to kind of thinking as a way to say like this is why I deserve the A or this is why you should hire me. Those things are going to matter more and more. And it's not going to be just like it will be how do you leverage your thinking to make a great outcome or product with AI, but it still is something about you, right? What you can contribute to that process.
Oh, for sure. And like one of the biggest cliches in education is like process over product, but it's actually kind of true. Like, in the world in which, AI becomes AGI and like becomes, sufficiently sophisticated, like anybody will have the opportunity to produce like a perfect quote unquote product at the end of the day. But that doesn't matter. It's like, we want to, understand the process so that we know that it's you. Like we care about the unique individual that you are. We care about your perspective and your critical thinking and your development. And so it feels like AI has almost like forced that discussion of process like even more into the spotlight, which I think may be positive overall.
Yeah, I think it's similar to like when calculators came out, right? The knee-jerk reaction was like, oh, we can't use them. But then we kind of settled onto like, oh, you just have to show your work, right? And also there's like a minimum kind of expertise that we expect of all students before we really introduce calculators. And I think we're going to settle out to something very similar with AI, where there's going to be a kind of minimum standard by which you need to really kind of have skills at. And that would probably include like, being able to communicate with it, being able to prompt correctly, which would require being able to either write or speak or articulate what it is that you want it to do. And then also how to think critically about that kind of outcome. But then it's going to be about kind of like, okay, now you have to show your work through the process because I think I would say is like what we're not interested from a learning perspective is like zero effort. Zero effort is not that's not the point of learning. Learning takes a lot of time and effort. It's hard. There's a lot of friction. It's actually those pieces that make learning, this like recursive, like we're basically able to leverage that to learn more. So I think that's largely how things are going to shake out. But.
Oh yeah, for sure. Go ahead, Elvin.
No. Unfortunately, we're running out of time. But always, Bradley, you get one more question, and I get my last. Go for it.
One more question. Let me see. I like had something, but we got so deep into other stuff.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Right.
Why don't you ask yours and then I'll come back to me.
Okay. Gotcha. All right, Joe, great conversation, amazing insights. Thank you so much. So we'd like to ask the last question, unless Bradley wants to jump in.
I remember now.
Go for it.
Actually. Yeah. Okay. So we've covered this before on the podcast, but I'd love to hear like your opinion on this, Joe. So I mean, a lot of like, I guess like academic integrity administrators and thought leaders and whatnot, like, they look at kind of process tools, or like tracking tools. And they say like, this is like surveillance. This is like policing. We shouldn't surveil or police our students. Like kind of like how would you respond to that kind of criticism?
Um, that's a great question, especially coming from a guy that's proposing a biometric signature as part of academic integrity tools. There's I would say it comes down to a balance of friction and validity is like and in my past work is really trying to strike the right balance where you you don't want to have an impact on students, right? Essentially you want your honest students to skate through, right? You want to be able to trust them, and you want the verification process basically is just like you get a green check and that's all good. Um, and you want to exert some additional friction on the students who are, potentially going to be dishonest. And right now, what we have is actually a system where there's not a lot of friction imposed upon students who are dishonest. I can literally go buy a paper and submit it, and that's mostly undetectable, right? That's very low friction and so I'm actually might be a cheater might be encouraged perversely or incentivized to cheat because the stakes are so low. I'm not going to get kicked out. I'm not going to get expelled. And if I don't do the work, I'm just going to get a zero. And if I get caught, I'm just going to get a zero. I would say is like there's something I would say in a lot of cases that might be kind of incorrectly set up to potentially stop a cheater from actually cheating. Then that's just I don't believe that all students are cheaters, but the point I'm trying to make is that we can raise the bar in academic integrity to make it harder for cheaters to cheat and to make it so onerous that maybe it changes behavior. The main thing I want to make sure is that honest students don't feel pain by additional documentation, additional processes, additional hurdles because we have to raise the bar for all students. Is like I think honest students, we want to raise the bar to where they're at, which if you can use a keyboard, right? If you can use the text editors that your institution is providing, if you can work through, if you're doing the writing, you're largely kind of unimpacted by a solution like Cursive, which is latent. It's natural. It's easy to use. And I would say that's where
Or even
that's
positively impacted. It's like if the honest students have more peace of mind that their peers aren't cheating, they're less likely to cheat themselves. Like
that's a great point. And if I
yeah,
can
like
turn around and provide some additional valuable information from a quantification of self as a byproduct, I'm here for that too. And I'm really encouraged by students thinking about this as a way to focus on their concentration levels or to improve their fluency or to improve or to know how much more editing should I do because last time I got an A and I know my metrics for last time and this time I haven't done nearly as much, right? Or from a time management perspective of really having some more tools in the belt to do something. So
Yeah. It just made me real quick, made me think about when I was a kid, I would get this saying from people that would say, Evan, if you cheat, you're just cheating yourself. So I don't know if you guys ever heard of that. I
yeah,
used to get that all the time. You cheat, you're cheating yourself. So, all right, great conversation. Joe, let's ask the last question. And I think you talked about this a little bit, so feel free to expand upon it. What do you see as the future of academic integrity?
that's it. I appreciate this question a lot because has so much optionality in terms of like where we take this conversation. And as Bradley knows, I have a lot of thoughts on this. Is like I'll say one of the things I want to predict, and I think that this is largely happening, is that the academic integrity is becoming more and more of a concern for the college holistically rather than just the individual teachers. And I say that's mostly in kind of one way is like the cybersecurity and academic integrity are now well linked. There's a lot of there's a great article in the Voice of San Diego recently, which was talking about financial aid fraud, and largely it's being caught. It could be caught better with stronger academic integrity tools. Because what's occurring is that these bots and these kind of like criminal rings are enrolling either real people who have previously enrolled in the institution or other ways, international students that potentially don't exist but would have fake credentials, and they are basically defrauding the government of either Pell Grants or through loans. And they actually exist as students enrolled in the learning management system. So if you think about that, the learning management system is where learning is supposed to happen. It's not for bots, right? So it's like if you think of like there's a very low bar here where we should probably just be looking for learning management systems and others to basically help us to identify like, are these real people, right? And are they the people who you think you have enrolled? That in to me, that speaks as like there's a real opportunity here where academic integrity professionals and kind of the departments of IT and the division of IT or whatever it may be at an institution is really looking to make sure that fraud kind of holistically, largely, across the institution is not occurring. And that can be academic fraud, which exists, right? Which we know exists. Like if I log in as Bradley's through Bradley's account, we probably should have some checks to make sure that that can't happen. And I'm not talking about two-factor authentication. When it comes to academic integrity and when it comes to contract cheating very specifically, is like, it's not like bank fraud where somebody's trying to break into my account. When it comes to academic fraud, Bradley and I are working together to give me access to Bradley's account, which is a wholly different kind of endeavor when you're thinking about the security that we have on systems. Now, face-to-face classrooms, I would say, is largely are going to dodge this, but I would say there's something like 75% of students are taking at least one online course now. So this is, I think, is the kind of the concern for this and how this is changing. I would say is like I would say I would predict in the future that you'll see some more interesting technical approaches and kind of more concerted efforts by institutions to enforce some standards that will raise the bar, and it will benefit academic integrity largely because it will close some of these loopholes.
Yeah, and big tech companies spend, billions of dollars every year on KYC, which like stands for like know your customer. Mm-hmm. And it's like if we're going to, these crazy technical degrees of difficulty to stop people from, selling like $10 trinkets on eBay, and the value of a degree is like tens of thousands of dollars, like why aren't our academic institutions like, investing in, knowing who their customers are, right?
And I'm sure some of them are, and I would love to see, I'd love to see some of that starting to start to like trickle down to ICAI and other conferences where it's like that these, or in more collaboration kind of among these, the different departments, because, it's not a student conduct. It really is a kind of this about like, quote unquote, bad behavior and learning opportunities. But fraud and financial aid fraud is like, that's pretty serious. And these are wildly different, but in the sense that they are interestingly linked. And I think that some of this will trickle down. It might solve some of these academic integrity, solve kind of the more simple academic integrity concerns, mostly just by making sure that the enrolled student is only the person that can access that account. And so now you have a better, a more protected or a better walled garden or whatever terminology you want to use. So.
Yeah,
I have
absolutely.
other thoughts too, but I know we're at time.
Yeah. Oh my God, this is great. Yeah, we can keep going, but I just want to say real quick, I never thought two words would be put together: fake and student. I mean, to me, it's like a fake student. Unreal what the times that we're living in. This is crazy. So it shows how old I am. But this is great, Joe. Thank you so much. Let me outro my co-host, who is the most. He is Bradley Emmy. He's co-founder and CTO at Pangram Labs. Bradley, great questions, great conversation as always. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much, Elvin.
You got it. And he is your guest today, ladies and gentlemen. He is Joseph Thibault, and he is the founder of Cursive Technology and the creator of the This Isn't Fine newsletter. Joe, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. You've just ed up.
Thank you for listening. This episode is part of our Academic Integrity series, sponsored by Pangram Labs, the world's leading AI detection technology. Try it out at pangram.com. That's PANGRAM.com.